Want to call Chris also? And we're live.
I looked at our live stream, and there aren't a lot of people looking.
Usually one to make sure that it worked. Amanda.
The IDA, CRC, and CFC. The old businesses that the governance committee met on August 7th in Morrisville, and after considerable discussion and research and review of comparators, the three of us, Russell and myself, basically wanted to bring to the full boards a consideration for fee changes, a couple of them. One would be to increase the fee schedule from 250, the application fee from 250 to 500, and the total project cost to 1% from currently 3/4%. That's in keeping with looking at some of our expenses and some of here IDAs, TFCs, and so we think it's not overwhelming burden, and it shouldn't really result in decline in applications or of the economic development work that we're about. So, in fact, it seems that based on previous discussions, we want the costs, the application fee cost, to essentially cover the true costs of that for us. And even just taking it and paper. So that was the. This is Russ.
No, I agree with everything you said. I appreciate the fact that, we had a very nice table of comparables and, thoughtful discussion, so.
So that's our recommendation to the board, the full boards.
That's great. No, I think that's a perfect summary. Not only the posting in the newspaper, but the certified mailings that we send out to each of the taxing entities. Pretty numerous.
What's the last time we had? Has that been our original fee?
It has been our original fee since I was since I came on board. And even, we always had the 0.75% was rationalized with the mortgage reporting tax that was 0.75%. That fee for Madison County went up 7 years ago. We had a discussion, if I recall, regarding CRC projects, and we thought at that time that we might scare away applicants if we went with a full 1%. I mean, our last bond deal with Colgate was for $198 million. That would have been nearly a $2 million fee. That's a lot of money. And typically those bond deals try to keep, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they try to keep their cost of financing at below 2% of their total project cost, which includes their legal fees.
Yeah, the federal tax for 2%. I think I'll go with that off the insurance. Only up my equity to deal with that. Reallocate of 2% general rule of thumb.
I think those are still the recommendations that we'll take to the full board.
So I'm not sure. I guess the full board isn't in session then, so there's just an update.
Still a committee. Yep.
Okay. What else? Oh, general legal services agreement, new business.
We sent to you, and Amanda's going to pass out the Hobson Russ letter. And while that's being passed out, I'll just also touch on the housing policy. We did have an extensive housing policy discussion and had some examples. Russ shared a few articles of other IDAs doing housing projects elsewhere in the state. For you committee members, I sent you guys a handful of documents that Shannon from Hobson Russ put together. I didn't want to confuse you before this meeting. So that's just for a future discussion. What is before you now, and Chris, feel free to chime in at any time, is the letter that Chris has inked, probably from the first version that you sent. We had just a minor change, which was to look back to the July 1st date This discussion has been going on for several months, and at the last meeting, we said we'd like to get a revised document for the board to consider, and this reflects that versus, I think the original language might have said at the time of signing, it'll be prorated. But we will look back to July 1st.
The only thing I would add is, I revised the initial letter from the last meeting to reflect that we would provide these legal services to the IDA, CRC, and GFC. I had signature blocks for the IDA, the CRC, and the GFC, and should be respective boards want to move forward with this. Actually, we should have a meeting of each of the three entities, give us like wake up and approve each one of those entities. And each one of those entities should approve this for purposes of an authorized officer signing the engagement letter.
What we're in now is just a committee meeting, so we'll make that recommendation, and we are scheduled to meet as the GFC, CRC, and IDA today.
Correct.
Does the committee need to take action, the governance committee, or
Just a recommendation to the full board.
Make a motion to recognize this.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? Zero. We will make that motion to full board. If there's no other business, motion to adjourn. All in favor, we're adjourned. We'll make the motion to leave on full session.
Excellent, thank you.
So you're going to continue discussions on the housing policy. The government's going to-
The governance committee, I hope will meet again so that we can continue the discussion with some, the marching orders following that was, let's get a few housing policies from other IDAs to use for consideration. I was able to find, Oneida County had one, Hertford County copied it verbatim. And then there's a lot of other examples that have formulas, both their UTEP and some that have housing policies baked into their UTEP. So, uniform tax exemption policy. All right, the audit committee is chaired by John Selka, and Steve Potter is not here. Lacking a quorum, we could still call it to order, but maybe we need a quorum to call to order. I don't know.
I'm on, I need, there's three.
Oh, you're on it also?
Yes, I'm on. So,
Amanda, why isn't this thing?
I got to know that somebody won't be into it.
Yeah.
Noted.
Writing your name in. Yeah. Okay, so we'll call this, audit committee to order, old business, and we need approval for minutes, March 28th, 2024 meeting. He wasn't on it.
It's all right. I was even told that you could approve minutes even if you weren't there to vote for them.
We'll accept your motion.
I'll second it. Okay, all those in favor of accepting the minutes? Aye. Aye. Okay, new business, proposed draft IDA CRC, CFC 2025.
The first one in your packet behind the minutes is the GFC. We are hoping that we might give some loans out this year through the GFC, in which case we might pay a $10 fee to the bank to issue checks for those projects as we did during COVID. So I'd simply put in $50 as business development fees coming out of our reserves. Yeah. The next page is the CRC. On the income side, we've got pretty substantial interest income coming in based on our laddered CDs. We have kept a $500 business development fee if we ever need to wine and dine a client or send home a Madison County-based gift to a site selector. It's easier to do through the CRC than the IDA. I am showing dollars allocated towards the Morrisville State College Foundation commitment based on their bonds. That's half of our fee from years ago that might get used in the year ahead. Otherwise, the CAS and Colgate or Hamilton and Casanova community funds have all been spent. And then we have fees to other public authorities, which is the administrative services contract to allow the IDA to operate the CRC's organization. That's the fee that's been ticking up. We've got a 4.5% increase requested. Again, fairly straightforward. Next, we've got the IDA budget, which is a little more in-depth, but doesn't change a whole lot year to year. Starting in the top right corner, the 2025 request. We are requesting from Madison County, who has been very generous in supporting investment funds into our economic development efforts. Historically, they have covered our salary and benefits. That has diverged over the years. Many years we haven't seen an increase. Each year we do ask. This year we asked for a 4.5% increase. Got that, but that's what we submitted to Cindy. We're going through the treasurer's office now instead of the planning committee, which is different, but again, probably better. I think there's sometimes more scrutiny for nonprofits and other organizations that request for planning. Strictly planning still. Planning, economic development, and workforce development. I'm not sure how broad their committee name is now. Again, the CRC administrative contract, also a 4.5% increase. Reserves are making up between our expenses and the anticipated revenues. We have a baked in 3% increase on the rental of real property. That's to both Sandy and to tourism. And our interest income probably ticking down slightly with interest rates slowly coming back into normalcy. Request on unallocated insurance, if you don't mind me going line by line, is a 10% increase as recommended by our CFO. Our personnel cost of living increases, again, we're looking at 4.5% across the board. You will notice a little bit different on the CFO bookkeeping. Beth did retire from the town of Sullivan. She's working through pension, receiving her pension benefits, and there's some income limits. So we've talked with Rick, and we've talked with our CPA, and everybody's comfortable with scaling back her pay for this year. We'll make it up next year. And our expenses, a lot of which are simply looking at a 4.5% increase. Office expenses, just rounding it up to a full 1,000. Dues and subscription has a bigger increase, but we were on the phone yesterday with the newspaper. $9.50 to have a $2.50 newspaper delivered on 3 days a week, the dispatch. Just those expenses are going up. That also includes any Chamber of Commerce in Madison County that asks we become members. We belong to the New York State Economic Development Council, Center State CEO, all of the things you would expect. Our accounting is going up. I think we've got $2,500 worth of QuickBooks upgrades. They're going from a desktop version to a software-based or electronic-based. And our employee benefits are going up 12% overall. There's a 16% increase in pension, 13% in healthcare, and I assume our payroll tax would be 4.5% in line with it. And governmental agencies and nonprofits.
You said the benefits were going up to what?
Pension and healthcare are higher than cost of living increases. That's not unusual. You find a lot of governmental agencies that their benefits are a large portion of.
And everybody said, so happy that healthcare was only going up 15 or 20%. You know, oh, it's only going to go 20% this year.
So this budget goes to the treasurer's office?
Yes.
So the budget here, it doesn't go through, the budget doesn't go through planning?
The IDA line item is now part of the treasurer's budget versus planning. We still report to planning. And then obviously the full board of supervisors, as you all know, see the entire budget.
It kind of makes sense.
And back to Beth's salary, I mean, whether it's legal or not, probably is, but just so it's on the record, you know, I mean, is it just something you shook your hands on? Or is there
No.
something down that-
We did the calculations, spelled it out, wrote it down, we emailed it over to Rick. Could definitely share that all with you. And obviously went to the CPA also. Everybody said agree. We understand the situation and we can, if you earn more than $15,000, then your pension gets shrunk dollar. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I think the $15,000 income is the cap. That rattled off things that we get to look forward to, Amanda, which was, it's a state pension program. It's 35, it's only. Right.
Oh, if you work for, okay.
But she threw out a statistic that you have to wait 5 years before you can get a cost of living adjustment, and then the cost of living adjustment only goes towards your first $18,000 worth of pension. That's like, wow. It sounds pretty rosy when they say, this is what you should expect, and all of a sudden, they're kind of nickel and diming you.
Yeah.
Is there any exceptions for law enforcement? If you want to become a school resource officer, there was a waiver there. You could get one.
There are waivers.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments? We can obviously take it up as the full board, but.
So we'll just make a recommendation on the other committee for, anyone said this?
I know last year,
Yeah.
because I presented them to you for the first time, I think, at the meeting, I was able to get this out to you just a week ago. I think we waited, actually, as a matter of fact, if I were to look back, I think Rick said, we've seen him, it's the first time we've talked about it as a group, but we're so far. But again, we are not in a rush as much as I've already sent to the county what they require, which was the big number, our request. There's no reason why we can't wait if the board chooses to.
They're just gonna recommend.
Well, because we don't know what the county's gonna do. So we can wait until our last meeting of the year to approve the budget for 2025 as modified.
The only thing that would change would be, the only thing that might change would be the other sources out of reserves to make up for any shortfalls. And we've got a hefty fund.
So usually you get the approval from the committee to submit to the council board. And that's already been done.
As we've done in the past, when the county says we need this by August 15th or whatever their date was. A lot earlier than I'm ready for every year. But I don't think there's any other business, John.
So, motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Thank you.
Oh, so you want to go and sort of GFC first and CRC then?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have a representative from DCC Ranger attending or anyone from Seneca Fields, the new applicant or the one that's under consideration. They both said they might send somebody, but then we have. Yeah, today's meeting. So since nobody's here, let's start with GFC. I'd say we might bump into it immediately if they were here, but.
We'll call GFC, order. Which order of business is to approve our minutes of our March 28th, 2024 meeting. We need a motion to approve the minutes. So, second. Dave, this is the GFC board meeting agenda, board meeting agenda.
Joint committee.
This is what I have.
Discuss GFC.
GFC.
Yeah, I got two.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, this is the one. And I don't seem to have financials for GFC, but I can verbally say that we've had no activity. We still have a full account balance available for loans at approximately $316,000.
We do have the budget.
We have the budget to discuss.
Okay.
I guess the formality would be asking General for the recommendation from the GFC.
So no changes in the no expenses.
No expenses.
Reports from committees.
John, on the budget.
The audit committee is stating the budgets, respecting budgets, and it's our recommendation that we, well, what do we do?
Recommendation to adopt the
Yeah, I
2025.
don't
That's
know
a-
that one. Yeah. For-
So is there a motion to approve the 2025 budget? As
For the
presented?
GFC.
Yes, I will move that we approve the 2025.
Second by Russ. Any discussion? Not roll call?
Rogers. Laura. Solka. Murphy. Moran.
Yes.
Argos. Thank you.
Oh, and then the general services agreement. I think it's got a recommendation on
Can't have you confused with paperwork. Morse code.
Well, I had an important birthday.
So I'll have an approval, actually, this didn't wasn't discussed by
the governance committee. Not
the, was with numbers, not the, audit. Which one?
General services letter.
General service.
Any other business from the audit committee report? Oh, thanks. So, the governance, now, the governance.
We talked about it.
They did not, they did not.
We did discuss it in the governance committee. No, our finance committee looks at bonds, audit looks at the audit and budgets, and governance does policies and
So
attorney pay.
I'll make a motion.
Russ can make the motion. He's on the governance committee.
We approve the legal service agreement. Which we talked about before, right?
Is there a second?
I can second.
You can second it.
Anybody could, I guess. But anyway,
Any further discussion?
good job.
So, do we have to do a budget modification?
Yes,
So we bring money to pay him.
we will have budget modifications at the next meeting, which will be the last meeting of the year. We'll have a handful of modifications. We might have gone over on accounting, building maintenance slightly, which all of
But you have a legal service.
No. We'll have to create one.
So pick on and fund it for the balance of the year.
Correct.
January 1st through December 31st.
Chris, is the contract saying that it gets paid by December 15th of each year?
Yes.
It's in my head. We'll make sure we create a line item, and if the board can approve the contract, then we'll be sure to have a budget modification presented at the next meeting. at November.
We need a roll
They
call.
do, sorry, they do work on GFC activities. What is paid for legal service?
The IDA does.
And that's gonna probably, unless you can take it from another appropriation line that you haven't done. If you haven't spent the money, don't intend to spend the money, you just do a change of appropriation. Right. And reduce one, increase the other. Or you can take it from reserves.
Our contingency.
Or contingency, is your sort of contingency line.
Or it might come from the project. Oh,
Could be.
so the 12.5 is. Let me look at is what's left
So,
after any revenue that's generated to be able to pay legal services from the projects.
That's over and above our general administrative agreement.
yeah, this is project specific, get paid directly from the project applicant to us. This is for stuff that's outside of project related. Like developing a housing policy for us or.
So if we have a GFC project,
I don't anticipate that there'll be any legal costs. The GFC's primary thing is to facilitate grants and to make loans, of which that framework's already in place. Is that okay? Are you comfortable with that?
I'm just trying to make sure we know what we're paid out of each budget.
So GFC won't be paid, their budget won't be modified.
I only anticipate paying this out of the IDA, which
That's because we were going to pay legal expenses. That's $77.
$50 a minute.
Okay, any other discussion?
I think I already moved to approve.
Yep, you did.
Yeah, a motion and a second. Roll call. Roberts?
Aye.
Laura?
Yes.
Solka? Right? Murphy?
Yes.
Moran?
Yes.
Barkos?
Thank you, director's report.
We might have a loan. KJM Consulting has been talking with a couple of doctors who might choose to move their practice into downtown Oneida, and they might need some improvements to that space. A lot of people have been hesitant to apply for loan funds because our going rate is prime plus 1, which yesterday would have been 9.5%. That's expensive money. I have told Mike, based on, a little bit of back and forth, that let's encourage applications. If we can get more of this money working in the community, be it the county's funds or the GFC, I think on a case by case basis, the board would be willing to at least hear out an applicant who might apply for 5% money as an example. So, no reason it should be sitting idle in our. So, that's all I have.
Any new business? Any other business, next meeting is going to be adjourned, to be adjourned.
Definitely in March. Our Paris reports.
Second. Second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, adjourned. So, the next meeting, call to order is the CRC Board of Directors meeting. And the first order of business is approving minutes of our March 28th meeting. Yes. We don't have the minutes. One page. Motion approved. Second by Steve Zerke. Any errors, corrections, omissions? That, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There. Review the financials, do you have any?
I've got a balance sheet there for you. We've got a checking account balance of $16,493. CD investments of $1,217,250, and a little bit of money market that we couldn't roll into a CD, just $1,490. Total assets of $1,235,234. And on the equity side, I don't know why that 9,000, I pointed it out the other day, but I don't have an explanation. I believe that money was paid to Kaz Arts, the last piece of remaining money tied to the Cass College bond financing. But we do have the 83,436 set aside for an anticipated use in Morrisville. Retaining the earnings less net income, our total equity and liabilities equals our assets.
Do you think that 9,000 is yet to be paid out, or?
It was paid in 2023, I don't know. I don't know why that hasn't been adjusted in QuickBooks, but we'll fix it. Yeah. Mentioned it to our CFO and she said she'll look into it.
And all of our expenses for the CRC are paid through our contract with the CRC's contract.
Yeah, the only expense coming out is the administrative services contract, and then on the income side is interest.
Motion to approve the financial report. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we have the proposed draft reports and committees. Audit committee.
John, on the budget for the CRC. Recommendation coming out of committee.
Thoroughly reviewed it.
As presented.
These two other authorities.
To the IDA, just administrative services contract for the CRC to the IDA.
And then the IDA pays all any CRC expenses.
Yeah, the personnel, all of that is just tied into the administrative services.
Motion to approve the 2025 budget as presented.
Second.
First was from John.
Oh, you got John. Okay. Second by Steve. Any further discussion? Not roll call.
Rogers.
Aye.
Laura.
Yes.
Salka. Murphy. Moran.
Yes.
Argos. Aye. Thank you.
Executive Director.
General Market Services.
Governance Committee.
I believe we approved general legal services.
Second.
Second.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion?
We're going to take our
Roll call.
Rogers.
Aye.
Laura.
Yes.
Salka. Murphy. Moran.
Yes.
Argos. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. I cannot have any other business to bring before the board.
Any other business? Next meeting to be determined. Motion adjourned. So moved. Motion by Zero, second by Russ Lura. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Adjourned. IDE. I'll call for the IDE directors meeting. First order of business, approve the minutes of our July 18th, 2024 meeting. Moved and seconded, Russ and Dave. Any errors, corrections, omissions, deletions? Not all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Carried. Review financials.
Couple pages beyond the minutes. We'll start off with the IDA balance sheets, month end of August 31st, 2024. Checking and savings accounts, we have our operating capital at 226,159, payroll at 10,593, money market at 229,159, and multiple CDs at a couple of institutions at 680,809, giving us total cash and checking and savings account of 1,146,721, less deferred outflows. We have total current assets of 1,076,449 change. Fixed assets, land, building, machinery and equipment, furniture and equipment, less accumulated depreciation gives us total fixed assets, 286,663. Giving us total assets of 1,363,112. Liability side, we've got a small amount on accounts payable and accounts payable adjustments. The next page are payroll liabilities and other current liabilities, along with our pension liability, giving us total liabilities of $10,282. We do have, on the equity side, have a fund balance unrestricted of $882,672, designated building maintenance fund of $56,811, investment in capital assets $286,663, retained earnings of $73,193, net income of $53,490. Our equity and liabilities equal our assets. There's not any questions. The revenue appropriation analysis is next. We've got our IDA fees, interest income, both from money market and checking, our rental of real property, which is sailing and tourism, grants from local governments, Madison County, 185,680, CRC contract income, 101,142, giving us a total income of 299,355. On the expenses, we have wages, totaling 117,900, contractual expenses of 59,233, employee benefits gives us total expenses of 237,686, giving us net income for the year of 61,669. And there is a breakdown on the next page of our vendor expenses for the month. Our healthcare things come out as one large chunk. That's why we see some larger numbers there. Your man has gone out to bid on snow plowing. People are reaching out to us. Just standard expenses. Our cleaning service. Twice a month, $100 ballpark, right? Yeah. And then the final pages are in-house, the right couple of columns showing percentage of remaining balance, but our budget versus what we've spent for the year. Bottom left-hand corner gives us a snapshot of our cash balances of the organization. Any questions?
Yes.
We'll make a budget modification for our county, which we're overspent by $159. And we anticipate building maintenance to exceed what we spent. We'll do this one. Yeah. Beth had prepared one, and I said, let's wait because we're going to have more. We'll clear it up at the end of the year.
So you haven't paid yet for that.
The painting has not. That was in September. Yeah. Yeah.
You get to take the doors off?
Yes.
Also.
Maybe not the covered doors, but they did replace the hardware. It was all gold. Our curtains need to be upgraded. They match the carpets that we had, the nice green tints. Amanda got a quote from the folks, and we can't afford the $100 curtains. The problem is they're custom length. $8,000. Not just this, but my office, Amanda's, the other. Yes. I am frugal.
It took me 15 years to pull the trigger on paint.
If you recall, which you probably don't because it's easy to forget, but there was green wallpaper in here and in the bathrooms, in the women's bathroom, wallpaper was peeling off. And there were some surprises. The wallpaper in the men's room was never finished drywall. They just wallpapered. They skipped a step. It took a long time to get the paper off, as you might imagine. Sheet rock without any paint under it. It was about you guys. I have an old house and there's always unforeseen things once you dig into a project. But we're very, very happy with the results. The carpet looks good. You might even notice if you parked in the back, the cubicles are new. They get a nice green tint also.
Any motion for the financial report? Moved by Dave Rogers.
Second, yeah.
Any further discussion, questions? Not all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Reports of committees. Governance. That's you first.
General services. Oh, please get them also.
Yeah, please go.
Oh, so, as we shared earlier, we're recommending fees first. We're recommending an increase, doubling of the application fee and, 3/4%. So, I mean, just make a motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Not, roll call.
Rogers. Laura.
Yes.
Salka. Murphy. Moran. Burgos.
That's
All new applications. And I've already forewarned Chris, and there'll be,
there's no projects in the works.
there is, we've got a new application that came in. It would not be impacted by the new fee because the application's in hand and their check's been cashed.
So, housing policy discussion update, so.
To be discussed further.
Yeah, we'll get back to you.
We're making progress.
We're making progress. That's our report, and, I guess, legal services agreement, once and for all.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Please go.
Now, roll call.
Rogers.
Aye.
Laura.
Yes.
Salka. Murphy. Moran.
Yes.
Burgos. Motion carried.
Audit committee. Proposed 2025 budget.
The audit committee recommends we adopt the 2025 budget.
So, I think we should probably wait on it because there's going to be some modifications. Oh, there's no line item for the
Legal services.
Legal services, so there's going to be some
Can we check with
changes.
the caveat or with the?
What, if you want to, you got the amount.
Perfectly fine to wait.
Yeah, I mean,
Just gotta table it, we've got a
Because it's
motion.
gonna change, amount you're gonna need to preserve. Again, you don't still want to look at counties. You want to know what's something.
We might have some feedback by the way.
So, when's our next meeting?
November.
So we can, I mean, it's your turn.
Okay.
But we'll have budget modifications for 2024.
Yes.
Well, at least the audit committee. is giving the refunds,
So we'll table that. I'll move
Table by
I'll move
Ray,
table.
second,
Yes.
do we need a second for the
Yeah.
table?
You do.
Thank you very much.
there's no vote on it. Requires a second.
You and I can talk about it tomorrow. Maybe when we do minutes.
There's no vote on a tabling. So just, so if someone moves it a second, then it's tabled, and it has to be acted on at the next meeting. The budget. Specific to the budget for 2025. Okay. Any other reports from the committee? Okay, Executive Director's report.
We're going to start with some handouts on DCC Ranger, who has submitted an application and requested a continuance of the pilot benefits enjoyed by the Good Nature Brewing Company. Amanda's got a handout as a project summary, as a letter from DCC Ranger, also public hearing minutes, which Russ, thank you for coming. Mayor Nancy from the town or from the village and from the town with Sue. It was, we had a good discussion. If you wanted to bring your attention, this is really boilerplate that Hudson West provides to me, and I read verbatim at the meeting, but the third page, halfway down to open public hearing on the floor comments. We did have Mayor Lovelace was asking about it, the request and the impact, and generally speaking, the village is, acceptable of what's being requested. Madison County has expressed the same. There is an email from the court saying that the town has also had a very good discussion on it and is not in favor of extending these benefits. The town did. And the school also, and the school has no problem with the continuation of benefits that's being requested. The DCC Ranger letter talks about the investment that they've made, exceeding $600,000 in this calendar year. And I do believe that their request is being sought, or that they're seeking this benefit because they are struggling. When they decided to make improvements around January of this year, they hope to be closed for, I think, a month or two. They just opened their doors a few weeks ago. Any questions? I'm happy to answer those.
What was the nature of those investments?
Improvements to the tap room, tasting room, restaurants. Part of the big request was they can't accommodate sports teams. People come into Colgate and, they've got to seat everybody at 4 top tables, and they've made accommodations for 12, even 16 person booths that run around where a team might take up a couple of them. But those types of improvements, they've made changes, and we talked about it a lot at the meeting, just because, Nature's location and their business is a very social community asset. I'd like to say, and people have commented about the quality of the beer and some other changes that have taken place. They narrowed things down, and one of their big changes in the tasting room is to offer other New York State brews and ciders above and beyond just their own selection.
Did they give you a value on the capital improvements?
I think the letter says 600, exceeds 600,000.
These minutes note that it says, spoke with town supervisor Ethan Schwartz, along with county supervisors, and they're almost supported the application. So it was this subsequent discussion at her town board.
That is correct.
That is reflected in that email.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Initially, she said, we don't have a problem with it. And, I think getting back to, digging down into the comments from Evan as the representative of their board, it's a private equity firm from out of state. And they probably have deep enough pockets and don't need to receive tax benefits, that might not typically be afforded to an existing business. In this case, it is a request for the continuation of a benefit that was already sought and offered to Good Nature. Does that make sense?
Then was there, we have the ability to modify that, right?
If we were to modify, and Chris chime in, if we were to go with a modification, much like we did with Myers Creek. Meyer Creek Brewing Company, we had offered a modified 5-year agreement starting at 50% and taking up 10%. They paid 60% of the full property taxes in year 2, 70% of the year 3. We would need to hold another public hearing, notify the public in the affected taxing entities that we're considering deviating from our uniform tax exemption policy. If we were to look at an alternative schedule.
Even the proposal is less.
Chris?
Well, let's see, if they're,
I think it's still.
for a second, so if they want less benefits than they were originally getting as the assignment, the assumption document that we prepare, I'm not sure, because they're not getting additional financial assistance, they're getting less than what they expected. I'm not sure if public hearing is required.
And based on my assumptions, the last page of that package, I do have a schedule of the first 7 years that Good Nature was able to, again, looking at assumptions, the taxable value and the current tax rate. If we were to look at a modification similar to what Myers Creek was offered, I calculate that as just being $98,581, which is less than the $100,000 threshold. Chris, does that ring a bell to you? Did we, I'm pretty sure we did have to hold another public hearing and notifications by certified mail of the taxing entities on the deviation from our UTEP for Myers Creek.
You're going to give them different terms under a pilot agreement set forth in your UTEP in terms of the abatement schedule, then yes, you have to send a deviation notice out to tax jurisdiction. You have to wait 30 days to get, any kind of feedback on that, and then you would need to approve that deviation.
I do remember reaching out to the affected taxing entities, even though they were all comfortable with that, with the original request. The modification was something we notified people of and held a public hearing.
So I would be more favorable to modifying them rather than having final 8 years. Rather than continuing to find.
Maybe the assumption of the existing.
So I think just
More,
if we were to go that route of modifying the plan agreement deviation, we need to go out, and I think we would probably table this assignment and assumption resolutions that we have before you today, because, if we go down that route, we're going to do a deviation with approving resolution. We could just do it at a subsequent meeting, approving the assignment assumption and the other docs as well. So I don't think we need to do anything if the board chooses to go down that route.
Yeah, there is a resolution that Hodgson Russ drew up accepting or approving a resolution approving the continuation or the assumption of the existing schedule.
and they're no longer a farm authority, which is part of the reason we supported it initially. So I think that was the same in one of our discussions with Myers Creek as well. It changed its focus, it changed its operation. But we did not object to modification of the term, but we didn't continue. I think that this seems to be appropriate here as well.
Isn't it almost like that? Or at least the big overlap is significant.
Neither one made it successfully. Somebody else took them over and has asked for some relief. And I hesitate to give one greater relief than the other.
Or less.
Or less.
I think to keep in mind also that Myers Creek originally had asked for a more substantial, in which we chose to, or the board chose to scale it back. In this case, it is the 15-year where they are contributing. And I'll also emphasize that in the good nature, the new owners, DCC Rangers, simply didn't ask for other sales tax abatement benefits, but just to throw that out. And Liz, I think you might have commented at the last meeting what the bottom line number would be on 5-year versus so it's approximately double the benefit from 98,000 to 189,000.
That's substantial.
So you can chime in on the record.
Just a slight correction, the minutes, I'm not against pilots, but I think that pilots require, and we have certain processes in place for certain scrutiny, but, in this particular instance, I think the pilot is justified. So we went from a mom and pop operation to a venture capitalist investment, and I just didn't see where, it would be, but again, that doesn't mean I don't think the pilots are a good idea, but in this particular case, I think so. And I hold to that.
Have we ever considered the financial needs of the applicant when we consider granting a pilot?
We don't typically dig into those financial projections.
Or where they're from?
Right.
Where they're headquartered, I mean, we really look at the project itself and not the means of the applicant.
Well, but ultimately, though, it's the applicant who's going to profit or lose on the project. And so, I mean, there's a direct connection, obviously, between who's doing the investing. Again, to me, in my mind at least, it went from a mom and pop operation to was something that we had whole kinds of speculation and venture capital involved, and I just didn't think that was something that would benefit as much. They needed that kind of.
But does that, but if they're, well off financially, does that give them any greater advantage in making a profit from the operation of the business?
Well, I think a bigger corporation has more expertise, all right, and is more profit. Other businesses profit minded. But seems to me if you get into the venture capitalists and big guys, they're more concerned about the raw dollar.
Whereas, I mean, it could be argued that, a type of business like that, the locals would have an advantage over a bigger concern because they know the business and the customers. So wouldn't they have an advantage in making it? Yeah, but so's the others there. Yeah, they're both hypotheticals about it. So. But they're also hiring locals. I mean, it's going back to why we, fundamentals that we look at when we.
I don't think we have.
No, we don't, but I mean, we did when we first looked at it.
No, we didn't try to do this, that's what it's really necessary. We don't really have a but like I said before, they are obviously a venture capital firm. They have the money to be able to spend and do it. Doesn't mean that the revenue generated is sufficient to make it successful.
Without.
And I think that even though they didn't ask in advance, they didn't ask in advance because maybe at that point they didn't have to.
Did they even know about it?
That was reality.
Probably not.
Reality comes.
It's my guess. I'm sure if they looked at the good nature books, they saw a line item for taxes. That's what they put into their consideration, which was a pilot, not taxes. Again, I'm speculating here, but I assume.
I'm just trying to put myself in there. actually wouldn't look any further into those expenses. You know, what the arrangement was for those payments in lieu of taxes, I would just assume that's what I could expect going forward for a period of time, based on the current assessment. Sure.
And I don't have any basis for saying this, but I just wonder about the private equity business model. Will they flip this again? And then will another entity come back to us?
Could very strong possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's out of our control for, this initial.
Yeah, we won't have anything to do with that.
No.
I mean, there's no way we could foresee.
No,
I mean, his business can settle this.
it's fine. I mean,
That's,
right.
that's capital.
So we're not gonna pilot benefit if they do.
Right, so
Do we have to limit on how many-
so I think a lot of,
Yeah. Well, we're not restarting the clock every time. So it's, I mean, we're staying on that.
Which is,
Right.
and which
They're
is
not
my
asking
earlier
for
point,
a
that Myers
restart.
Creek was looking
Yes.
for a restart.
Right.
Whereas in Good Nature's,
It's
I just want to.
So really, not comparing apples to apples in some respects.
no, and even the Empire pilot was 100% 10-year that our board approved. And the state was,
They started out at 25%.
Once 15 years.
Yeah,
it was 15 years, which is part of our UTEP.
And now we're in the 50%. You know, and then 75% 3 years, so. Not a real. Kind of, this doesn't happen very often, but we probably should take a look at, what do we want to do in the future with these things? I mean, we probably should set a policy on how, what businesses, when they apply for benefits, do you expect these benefits to carry on if you sell the business?
Two for two in Birmingham.
Yeah, we're two. So, do you want to do that? Do you want that to stay with the business concern, regardless of who owns it?
other clients.
Yeah,
I would say.
that's a good question. Chris, tell us.
Chris, do you?
I have not an idea that I'm aware of any kind of policy on, the new company coming in and whether or not they get the benefits. It's always done on a case by case basis. There's not a policy specific to that. Not opposed to it, it's an interesting idea, but that's not on the books of the other ideas that I'm aware of.
It's just, from the business side of things,
Well, it's not like we're setting any precedent here.
Well, we sort of do with Myers Creek, because that kind of was brought up. Well, why would we do something more for their time? We did Myers Creek. Well, we're in the business of rolling out the car for businesses that want to come to our county. So,
And Rick, I might even say, asking that question of an applicant, what happens if you sell? It's not gonna matter to the applicant, because if they have to sell, they have to sell, they don't care. what the
no,
business
no,
is.
but I'm, it's about, but it's. Right, we're not thinking about that, but I am. Because we're faced with these decisions. And there's value to it. For the new consumer and for the seller as well, and then exactly how it's out. And we did something similar with, we had to deal with something similar with Dyke Holding when they sold the Canadian company. I don't think there was a pilot, I think it was just a lease back.
That had been a bond deal back in the day.
It was a bond
Sure, it
deal.
was before my time, but that's what I've got. We've got the books, we can look at.
But again, we don't generally look at where they're from, and we don't really look at their financials. It's to make it, and I think that's what the letter from the town board kind of maybe think more about that. It's like, we focus more on their financial needs and not what they bring to the community investment. jobs that they create. Well, they have the money, so don't give it to them.
I don't think there's enough difference between the Myers Creek modification and then we modify it versus the suggestion that you modify it through one like Myers Creek. You know, there's nuances, there's little differences, a little here, a little there. This seems to be if we go, that's what we do with Myers Creek, we should do that with this.
If we were to go back, the decision that we made, I mean, we don't often do this, but do we regret the decision we made with Myers Creek, or was it basically an outcome that we're comfortable with?
You know, the Myers Creek, you're doing great. You know, so you get that little boost.
Yeah,
The original pilot or?
no, the modified.
The modified.
No. Feel good about it.
As far as to say that the taxing entities were all on board for the most part on the request, and it was this board that said, we think they ought to pay something, and this is what we're willing to offer. And they said, thank you very much, we appreciate that.
So what are they paying?
It's Myers Creek?
Yeah.
The schedule is the same on the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
50% of the 10% decrease year over year for a 5-year benefit.
And that's what good nature is assessed for, is a 1.7.
1.7 is on the books now.
And what did they buy it for?
3.3 according to their application to us.
5 times the valuation.
It was a public record. I don't recall off the top of my head what Myers Creek. If I'm correct in my understanding, Myers Creek or Empire built 60 barrel systems because they wanted to do a lot of wholesaling. And I want to say that Good Nature originally wanted to do 7 barrel systems and might have upgraded it to a 14 barrel system. Yeah, I think both of them, I think that it's reasonable to say that both of them overbuilt. And that overbuilding was, it was a lot of debt load to cover, and that's why they didn't make it. Both of them, I think Good Nature was the first farm brewery license in New York State. Empire was soon thereafter. But at that time, there was only like 71 brewing companies in New York State. Now there's 750. And instead of people in Buffalo looking for Empire Brewing Company out of Casanova, they're like, well, we've got 12 other brewing companies that are local, and it's just a different, the industry is different, and the representation throughout the state is different from when they started the farm brewery licensing. Business model. The business model, the wholesale business is not the same as it was originally envisioned when they wrote their business model. I think they've already changed. I mean, they've got their blonde, they've got their brown, and they just brought out their sport. Good sport is their newest beer, but they're holding it to those 3 versus.
Really?
Mhm.
That's all.
The brown won a gold medal at something a couple of years ago.
They're going to be a better restaurant.
I think, yes, I think it's a different model, it's different ownership.
I mean, I think that makes a huge difference.
To mirror the percentage benefit offered to Myers Creek.
Well, not exactly, but that's
Percentage wise.
this, I think you pointed this out, very similar to 485.
485B would be a 10-year, and I'm not a tax accountant, but I know that it's a 10-year benefit on 485B. It's a 50% in year 1, and it takes down 5%. So it takes 55%, 60, 65% over a 10-year period. And we've got another application that's looking at New York State Real Property Tax Law 581A. I don't fully understand. I've talked with assessors about it. I've done some research online. But if that project comes on. I don't know if they're eligible for 485. Right? This is the.
Well, I'll make a motion that we offer modified plan is the schedule.
But Rick makes a compelling argument, I think that the background of the corporation company shouldn't really have a strong bearing on these kind of decisions.
And I would really like to see the benefits continue, unless there's a compelling reason not to. You know, the burden should be, continue the benefits unless there's a reason not to, a compelling reason not to. And I don't see a compelling reason not to continue the benefits.
We've often adopted a but-for consideration, so I find it interesting that the town apparently has adopted, they wouldn't have this position but for the fact this is a private equity firm. And I think
That's-
that's,
not a defensible.
Right, that's why I discounted the upgrade.
yeah, just because they happen to be a different kind of.
It's just suggesting continuation.
Yeah, just as they are. And it's, and the, you know, the village, the county, and the school districts are all in support of that. And we don't have a good reason not to continue.
No.
The village, the town, you know, we got a lot of the town.
The village was in support of.
Oh. No, they were in support of that, the continuation of that.
Continuation.
That was how I read that in the minutes.
That's the way I understood it from our meeting. We discussed it after the meeting.
School district
Yeah.
said yes.
Yeah.
The county said yes, and the village said yes, and the town.
Originally said yes.
Said yes, but then at the discussion, the town board raised some additional concerns.
I think that's,
Which,
My impression was that the village was supporting a modification, not the actual continuation as it were. We talked about that.
we talked about it after, and I should have made an additional call, but I came out of the meeting with the impression that they were okay with the continuation, the assumption of the pilot schedule.
How many people came to that public meeting?
Including staff, 6,
and,
which is one of the largest attendances. of one of our
I'm
public
here to
hearings.
point out, how small are these proposals?
Well,
Okay. And some of the village.
and the county was too.
Yeah.
I will go as far as to say that you are correct in that our public hearings are not well attended, but I think a part of that is after we send certified mailer of the request to them, I pick up the phone and talk with a representative of each of the affected taxing entities to explain what's being asked, what it may be, and I think that limits, people understand what's being asked and they usually express to me, but I get it.
Maybe that was slightly cynical because the government is making bad decisions all the time. Their elected representatives are making bad decisions all the time. Okay, and that, I mean, that's being more philosophical than anything.
And I don't want to make a bad decision.
I agree with that. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
They're not a farm brewery. They're not buying product from local farmers. They are changing the focus from primarily a brewery to a restaurant with a brewery. So I think there are some pretty significant changes. If it was a restaurant, we wouldn't be doing it. It was just a restaurant.
It's retail.
So so I think that the modification is supportable, but I don't see a reason really to continue it as such. I mean, if it was a real continuation, they just came in, took over the business, ran it like we had originally been presented.
yeah, like I said,
We put a bad name with that.
it's not a matter of how, but it's corporate.
It's a pretty significant change.
So is that accurate? I mean, that's a good argument. I mean, that's a compelling reason.
I think those are all fair statements.
But if their original business model wasn't viable, then
The benefits didn't help.
it didn't help. And the loss of this would be an impact on the community. So the question to me does go back in a way of, did they know this going in? And we have no way of ascertaining
Probably can't
the
ever know
answer
that.
to that, right? So. we just
Can't
have
ask.
to- No, no, you don't know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Wasn't me. Russ does have a motion on the table. Is there a second for it?
I'll second.
Further discussion on the modification that's being proposed?
So do we know exactly what the modification is?
Yes.
That's what this.
Right, and that's what we're doing down there.
So just so I'm understanding it, just have a healthy discussion here, we're agreeing, the board saying that the pilot that would be offered would be, that would be different than the original one?
That's a motion that's on the table right now.
Okay, so if we went that route, we would, no, just go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You're
So,
discussion.
I think in that case, do we know the, I think Mr. Murphy just mentioned it, do we know the exact terms of the modified, that will be offered?
It would mirror Myers Creek, which would be a 5-year benefit, starting at a 50% discount, a 50% a pilot payment equal to 50% of the full property taxes due on the assessed value, and for that benefit to decrease year over year for 5 years.
Okay, so what I would suggest is the resolution would be to authorize sending out a deviation notice to the tax jurisdiction, which would specify this. I can certainly pay for that after the meeting, but that would be the resolution that should be adopted today. We would press deviation letter to go to tax jurisdiction. After that, we wait 30 days and we would formally approve if the board so chooses, and a subsequent meeting of the IDA to approve.
Would that
I mean,
require a public hearing?
Yeah, I don't think we're doing, we need a public hearing this because we already did one for the, talk about the, we had one back on, back in August 2024. And because we're operating the lab, that financial assistance, they would originally gotten, they just signed, we're assigned the documents, I think we're good from a public hearing perspective. And we're sending out the deviation notice, so they're all going to be certainly notified tax jurisdiction. I think we're okay with a public hearing.
It's a little awkward, right, for us to consider the town's change position after the hearing. But I think the final analysis says, we urge the IDA board to carefully consider their concerns. I think this modified approach addresses that.
Yeah.
I just add one more thing. I mean, you certainly could have a public hearing if that's the board's prerogative. It never hurts. I'm always for more transparency. So throwing that out there.
I don't think it's necessary if they were asking for a $200,000 benefit. We were considering a modified, cutting it in half.
But it's in the same vein as we did before.
Yes.
So in that sense, there's at least some precedent in a very similar situation.
So this somewhat mirrors one of the 457.
485B.
485B would be.
Similar.
I mean, it's a 10% 5 years, right? Yeah. Right. That was the rationale behind Myers Creek, right? It was a little better than the 50 over 45. Any other compelling reasons to?
Discussion. Yeah, but I think it could very well go again.
Yeah.
So we've got a motion and a second, and if the discussion is, but we would be looking to pass this motion to send out a notification to the taxing entities for an ultimate decision to be made at our next meeting, following getting feedback from the.
So we entertain that feedback, but not necessarily through a vote. Okay. Sure.
Roll call.
Rogers.
Aye.
Laura.
Yes.
Solka. Murphy.
Yes.
Moran.
Yeah.
Bartos.
Good job, Russ.
Happy about your point, good.
Yeah, this is happy. This is very good. I'm glad we- Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
without the-
We're all waiting.
Well, I didn't, until we had more discussion, I wasn't thinking that they changed more to a restaurant. So that-
Right.
I didn't see that.
Maybe they're saving grace.
Right, well, that's what my street was, why I didn't.
I haven't gone there. I haven't been there in a long time. Is it better food or something? Really? Oh, maybe I won't go then.
No, it's really.
It's very popular.
And you're absolutely right, if it was a restaurant, we would not be extending benefits, it's retail.
Good times when they ask my restaurant wedding for retail. It's got like some type
We
of-
can only do retail if they were getting more than 66% of their business from outside of our economic region, which would be Oneida and Shenango and Otsego counties.
That was the Madison.
Madison,
But the argument, you know, and restaurant was point, because originally it was a farm brewery type model that.
Yeah.
And the food was just secondary to the brewing operation. Was secondary.
Hopefully it's there. We should all.
Yeah, they have a meeting there. Send it out.
We will arrange, we will arrange for some sort of meeting so that we can get a taste of project that we assist. Maybe we'll find ourselves a good.
There's still a business after this.
Myers Creek, we're talking.
Oh, Myers, oh, yeah, I haven't.
So we can't really have a policy, it has to be on a case by case basis. Because it is.
Well, we did more still meeting there in the basement.
College council will consider it.
But again, they told them.
Given that we will take it under consideration.
Which we do. Okay. Next, all seasons.
Still an IDA under executive director's report under old business. All seasonings ingredients we tabled at our last meeting. There are a couple of requests here. They are asking for the ability to take out an additional mortgage, in which we're in the chain of therefore, this consideration is before us to allow them to take out an additional $1 million loan. This is part of their expansion and growth. This is helping with their working capital. One of the questions at the last meeting was, how much of that $1 million is going towards equipment? Only about $40,000.
And that is exempt.
Right, manufacturing equipment, again, in New York State is not subject to sales tax.
What's the rest?
Working capital. So there's the question of, will we allow the mortgage? And will we allow the mortgage along with sales and mortgage reporting tax? Or are we just willing to do the mortgage? Strong discussion at the last meeting was, we helped them with their expansion originally. And I will reiterate that off the top of my head, pilot benefit, the total benefits from the IDA, mortgage sales and pilot, was more than $440,000. Empire State Development, off the top of my head, provided assistance to the tune of roughly $330,000. They are also taking over a new building in downtown Oneida, in which they're receiving a small business assistance fund grant through the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. They've also been a party to a couple of loans from Madison County Revolving Loan Fund and the City of Oneida's Revolving Loan Funds. There's been a lot of assistance provided. They are a homegrown company. We are very happy to see them grow and expand.
This is a little bit.
This is a little different.
It just, on the face of it, it looks like they're just recasting the loan and looking for a mortgage reporting tax. They don't need a sales tax benefit because the equipment's exempt anyway.
Assuming it's manufacturing equipment, it could be warehousing, which might not be exempt, but I don't know.
We have a loan.
The county did, I was just trying to paint a picture of the,
They don't have a loan with us.
no. Our loan funds, we were able to give to Carrie Blackmore at Good Nature Brewing Company to facilitate their ESD grant, and we also had a couple of different loans during COVID to help bridge people on their IO or PPP loans.
It looks, I mean, is it fair that, I mean, are they just mortgaging, remortgaging the property and taking some equity out of it?
They are applying for additional loan funds to help them with their.
But no new buildings, no
new building.
new investment.
Um,
It's just accessing the equity of your business.
We don't know what it's for.
Operating funds.
Most of
So
them
to get cash. It's a little confusing.
Chris, is there any clarification from your perspective on what's being asked of us?
Reference, so the lender here does the title search. The title search shows the idea of having a leasehold interest in the property, which means we needed in order to provide the field tax exemption, the real property tax exemption at the beginning of the deal. So they're not going to give that loan unless the IDA signs a mortgage. Now, signing a mortgage is, you know, administrative. That's not a big deal. It's a resolution before you authorize that. The question of whether or not the IDA would to give a mortgage tax exemption on the loan. You know, maybe Kip and I had some discussions based on the fact that, you know, most of the costs, if not all of the costs, are being, the new loan will go towards, you know, working capital costs. You know, that's not really kind of the mission of the IDA, and I think that was discussed at the last meeting. Obviously, I'm just a lawyer, but in general, you know, to provide mortgage tax exemption, we want to link it to capital expenditures for a project.
So there are two questions: more tax breaks and a mortgage, and allowing them to take out an additional loan.
Which we can do that as the modification of our agreement, right?
Just authorization, which is the resolution that's been passed around. It specifically
That-
says
that
not
would
the
be
amount
done.
of recording tax.
That would be the normal course of business.
I think based on our previous discussion, I think it was more, I don't think at the last meeting, it was abundantly clear that we needed to get that more, the approval of allowing them to take out the additional mortgage to help them grow. And then the additional benefits. And what's before you in the resolution is what we anticipated based on our previous discussions and why this was tabled was yes on the loan, no on the tax breaks, but we didn't make any ultimate decisions. You guys wanted more clarification on what the money would be used for. And the answer that I received was approximately $40,000 in new equipment. They didn't specify what, but the bulk of it is for working capital.
So the resolution says the agency will not be.
Based on the ultimate decision by this board at today's meeting, they will paper up the legal term, right, Chris?
So this is how you draft the mortgage, if they want the IDA to sign, you know, we get that picture, kind of, like, their magic word. But, you know, by signing that, you're not agreeing to provide any financials, kind of apples and oranges. So that, I kind of thought that's the direction the board was gonna go, so that's why I landed there specific thing, as was referenced, that the mortgage recording tax exemption will now be provided.
Did we recall that discussion? I recall the discussion with you over the phone, but
That's the way that I had it. I'm looking at the minutes. The company is seeking mortgage reporting tax benefits, on a line of credit. Part of us question the reason why they will apply for mortgage reporting tax benefit. What specific use of funds will be mortgage agreement? More questions needed. Moran, more questions needed to be posted. Good job.
so good job.
We're clairvoyant.
But this is, you and I have discussed, and you talked to Chris as well. Is the board, is the rest of the board get that way as well? We are not going to grant any benefits, but we'll allow the mortgage. The loan. The loan.
Yeah.
Sure. Good job, Chris.
Sure.
So that's what this resolution
Where's
is.
where's getting me down? Essentially.
We are, as far as the UCC filing, I don't know if we'll move down the list, but we'll Yes, we will move down the list. But the bank was always ahead of us, and the bank will continue to be ahead of us. At a higher credit level. Motion?
Okay.
I'll second.
Second, any further discussion? We're getting down. Not roll call.
Rogers. Valero.
Yes.
Murphy. Moran.
Yes.
Burgos.
Consent resolution.
Amanda, would you mind Seneca Fields Lakewood Development Project application and potential resolution? Seneca Fields 2, we discussed that this would be coming. I've had a pre-meeting as requested by the developers to pull together and get a preliminary pulse from the school and the city about this potential project. They are looking to construct a $24 million apartment complex for seniors. 20%, at least 20% of the units will be affordable. And 10 units will be, so 20% will also be assisted living. In conjunction with the hospital, on the hospital property, much like phase 1, which I think was 32 units, they did not come to the IDA for assistance on phase 1. They took advantage of New York State Real Property Tax Law 581A, which is a percentage of effective rates. So their request to us is to deviate from our uniform tax exemption policy and to take a 4% to pay a pilot payment equal to 4% of their rents less expenses, and have a 3% increase year over year during the life of the 15-year pilot, which is being asked of us. I'm sure we'll have more questions. I'm sure I'll need more clarification, but I believe that's a succinct explanation. What is before us is a potential resolution to hold a public hearing, to notify the taxing entities, and to do more of an analysis of the cost benefit. If you look at the application and you look at the anticipated real property tax benefit, they state $18,000. That is not correct. We have asked for clarification, and the clarification has come back to say that the benefit is closer to $200,000 if you subtract the IDA pilot request from what they could receive for 581A tax breaks, which is where they're $200,000. What I will need to drill further down on what the full taxable value will be versus the pilot being requested, and that will go into my cost benefit should we choose to advance this project. And I can tell you from our preliminary meeting with the school district and the city, though I don't think they had a firm understanding of what was going to be requested, the concept of creating 52 units of senior housing within the city, which might help to open up some of the housing stock for workforce housing. It is senior focused. I think it's a reasonable request, though I can't quantify what the full benefit is at this moment.
Yeah, and thanks for sending this out in advance. And I agree that it seems to be a real kind of social and demographic need, associated with the hospital, coming from rehab into a supportive living environment.
And if I remember correctly, Gene Morial, when he was CEO of the hospital, had talked about a vision of a 5-apartment complex with just simply senior living. And then the further you get down the line, closer to the hospital, the more needs you would need from the healthcare facility, and that it would be a symbiotic relationship.
Is senior somewhere defined as 55? Is that a thing?
Rusty, did you talk about this?
That's right.
There's also super seniors.
They get to go from the orange teas.
Yes. I was wondering.
How many square feet?
It's not
52 units?
52.
55,000 square feet. So these are,
Yeah, but the units themselves, after you
Less
put
than
less than
1,000
1,000 square feet, by the time you know, so they're not huge.
Oh,
They're probably ones.
Yeah, probably, some one bed.
One and two bedrooms. Yep.
Yeah.
And they did present to the planning committee. I had to abstain, but I have seen their blueprints plans. They had a modification to make it ever so slightly smaller than the previous approval they received.
so, on the pilot, well, on the property taxes, they have a choice whether they pay or assessed value or based on.
Based on income.
Is that income less expenses, or is it based on their rents? You
I don't know.
may not have told me this, but do you remember, Russ, how that?
No, for sure. The building, it's the assessor.
The assessor has the ability to take an income approach to it, to assessing the property.
But I think it's
But I'm not sure that the owner
the owner
can
can't.
just say, do this. They probably can say, like, do it for income. I'm not sure that they have the right to say that's what has to be. I don't know that they should. But the assessor does.
And I've had a discussion with the assessor about the previous project in which they did take advantage of 511A.
So when you do your analysis, cost benefit analysis,
I will quantify that. But I usually don't do that additional legwork until we're proceeding with the project. If we want to call for a public hearing, we can notify affected taxing entities, talk with them about what's being requested, and at that time we'll have 4% less.
So if they're
Affected
no,
rents.
it's basically the profit, 4% of the profit would be very little.
Public road.
Yes, and it'll pop out on Time Warner Road, so it'll complete access out to give them a second point of access.
To which road?
What will they do about garbage? So with that, I like these projects. I think they're great. But the amount of money, the pilot payments, I don't see how that could cover. Things that is.
Well, it doesn't come in service, it doesn't come in special districts. So they still have to pay fire, water,
Garbage. Garbage. Maintenance of plumbing. And, it was 16,000. How much is going to put the city?
20% or less.
that's based on whatever the projected profit is.
Three or 4,000 dollars a year. The city will maintain services.
Won't come into gas.
But you also take a,
What the city's okay with that, but you really a low kind of thing.
you'll be able to find other similar projects in other protection jurisdictions in the state.
They shared a few different other communities where they have entered into pilot agreements. Erie County comes to mind, and it's been a while since I've reviewed those, but they did share with us a few examples of other communities. Steuben County maybe, and Erie County might have been two examples. It is more complicated.
So you just get some existing data from those other existing facilities, in the protection jurisdictions. Yeah, I'm very much in support of the project, so, I mean, it's a $24 million project.
$24 million capital.
15 million. So is this a series of buildings or?
This is the second.
So there's one building that's 2 units and there's one unit.
One single building.
But you can see there's going to be a lot of discussion in the pilot.
Yeah, I'd want to get city of Oneida. They try to look at the services they have to provide. If they provide this function.
Right, they might consider the benefit of the project. Huge.
Could be- it could be-
So we would,
The resolution that I have before you is to call for a public hearing and notification.
do we need to really nail down what the finance going to look like before you do the public hearing stage?
Right, well, that's a great question. So we can authorize holding a public hearing and then get back to the company and do the investigation and then set the public hearing once that's nailed down, provide those, updated materials, ideas of what we're gonna, how to actually work in the public hearing. So you could authorize the public hearing now just to get it over with, and then not a public hearing until, we have more information.
So I do a public hearing, when we're sitting there, what's going to be presented?
We will quantify beforehand.
They don't set the date until we get the data information.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just gonna get emailed out to us, then? Or we're gonna have another meeting? We're gonna need to have another meeting.
I don't think we would need to have another meeting prior to the public hearing as long as I can gather the information prior to.
So the public hearing will most likely be on the most Lutheran pile. For them,
It would be based on their ask of
their
us.
ask, that would be, but then we can, without holding another meeting, public hearing, we can scale that back. if that's necessary.
Similar to what was decided in the future. But it would be a modification from it's already a modification from us.
The idea ultimately is that to do a
950 issue?
conservative pilot, we wouldn't need a subsequent public hearing. Back, worst case scenario.
But if we chose to deviate from what they asked, we would still give another notification to the taxing entities. That's it.
Yeah, this would have to be a deviation from your return, because this is a different way where there would be dealt with before.
They have an application into the USDA, I believe. Or it could be housing and community renewal using flood funds. But there is a formal application that closes today. They had to get it in because they won't make other decisions on this type of funding request until next year when they close the next round. At this time. So yes, there is. Because of their low-income housing component. I will ask the specific question before and make sure that the mayor or certain city officials understand. We see this payment potential to be X amount on an annual basis. You only receive X amount of this as the city. Will that be covering your costs and having to put that in consideration?
You want the locals to subsidize the housing project.
Right.
I mean, if they think it's an appropriate project, we're willing to support it.
But just make sure that everyone's got full
Make
knowledge
sure
of.
that they understand it.
Okay.
So, are we going to lose our form and find the capture data?
Yeah, we still have-
Okay.
So the resolution before us is you need the seeker resolution approved as well?
It's up to the board, we don't have to, but, Seeker's already signed off, and determination, back off.
The local planning committee has already considered the site plan and their modification and seeker, and has come to a determination in our resolution on seeker is to accept the city as lead agency and to accept their findings.
So the first resolution is they're called for the public hearing, they're authorized public hearing, the dates to be determined. So, moved by Steve. You ready for us?
I'm taking notes.
Moved by Steve, second. Second, Dave Renters. Any further discussion? Not all those, roll call.
Rogers. Laura?
Yes.
Murphy?
Yes.
Graham?
Yes.
Burgos. Thank you.
And then the second resolution is the secret resolution. Of the resident, Kip just said. So moved. Moved and second. Any further discussion? Not roll call.
Rogers. Aye. Laura?
Yes.
Murphy?
Yes.
Graham?
Yes.
Burgos. Okay, brief update, the Hotel Oneida parking discussion. To remind you, they are anticipating subdividing a portion of downtown parking lot closest to the hotel. In addition, another few parking spots will also be considered for subdivision for All Seasons Ingredients' recent investment in downtown Oneida for their property. The city is very much in favor of this as a sticking point to get the project off the ground and to see it succeed. I personally am not a fan of it. I expressed that, but there's a lot of public parking back there. I think that we could look at other options, but we should still anticipate the request by the city that hasn't formally come to us yet, that is to be the conduit to accept parking spaces or land for these two projects and to sell them at market value and to relinquish those funds or to give those funds back to the city after it's complete, much like we did for the Zeller Building Costello Eye Surgeons, which was a catalyst project back in the day to help with the revitalization of downtown, the repurposing of a substantial property. So that's all, just an update. Johnson Brothers, I did hear from school that their payment wasn't made. They since made the payment. And I'm urging them to get their other payment that's due at the end of this month in. So that was going to be a talking point, I guess, just an update.
And we covered all resolutions.
I believe so.
Any other business?
Sorry, it's just a calculation. For 52 units, pilot payment, approximately 16,000 would be about $300 per unit. Is that after 15 years, is that what it was?
3% uptick year over year.
And 26,000.
What's the
Per year? Just like a cost of living increase in.
Oh, they're saying the pilot would be based on their projected revenue, their profit. Because it's based on revenue minus their expenses.
$40 a month.
That wouldn't go very far.
Yeah.
No, that's really those numbers.
He's gonna work on it. He's gonna run a lot of numbers.
We'll figure it out, and we will know clearly what's being asked of us.
The state aid part of it, that they won't allow, pay larger than
Does we push their rent payment up, assuming it's tripping on.
they locked into that.
Making a point to ask that too, Russ, thanks.
Next meeting, November 21st.
How is Thanksgiving? That's not. That's okay. Week 4. Maybe just one other quick update. I did get an inquiry from the comptroller regarding our Paris reports. Some minor things that we addressed, talked with CFO, talked with our accountants about it. One was a keyboarding entry. Instead of the amount for Green Empire Farms, instead of typing in $712, it was $217 or something minor. And the other two questions were about the total project cost versus the benefit project cost, or the benefit project amount. The difference being soft costs like attorney and architectural fees don't count towards the benefit amount, so their sales tax doesn't exceed. Clarification helped. I went back into the applications, worked with Hobson Ross. We've resubmitted and they're perfectly fine, just to make sure everyone's aware of it. Learning some new things every day. In the mead, because they're engineers and architects already, I think $7,000 difference between the benefit amount, the total project cost, because they did it. The numbers are now straight in the state's eyes, and I'm glad, as I expressed to the person I work with, thanks for the clarification. We will be sure going forward to document that.
What was the date of next meeting?
21st of November. Yes, thank you. A lot of business and very good discussions.
There were, okay, please, thank you.
Well, I need a motion to adjourn.
And then please. Those are different. In one of these. Oh, one of each. You don't have another one. Well, I would do if you do want to. Yeah, no, I think.
Yes. As long as I can read my own notes and keep my thought process straight. Thank you all very much again.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I was kind of hoping someone was gonna have a hard stop so we could wrap up the meeting in time. I got 6 o'clock.